Recording, okay. Morning. Let's see, timber, page, Carolina Bird. Okay, Erica Sanchez. Can anybody hear me? Yes? Okay. Let's see here if I can hear anybody else. Okay. Meyer. Let's see. Timber, okay, let's wait and just see who else shows up. Chloe Clark's here. Okay. 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 Is this it? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I have a couple things to talk about this morning. One of the things I have to talk about is our schedule. So I want to share a screen and go look at the schedule. Let's see. That's this one here. Okay. Can you see the lecture topics and assigned readings handout? Yes, thank you. Okay, so we've covered chapters 1 and 2 in the previous weeks. We're working our way through the cellular level of organization, chapter 3. This is the biggest chapter in this first series. And then next week, we're going to do parts of chapter 4, okay? So that means we'll be ready for our first exam. It'll cover about 3.5 chapters. So at the end of next week, Friday, I will open the first exam, and it will remain open Friday and Saturday, and you'll have to take it one of those 2 days. It'll be one attempt, 60 minutes, 35, 40 questions, something like that. You'll have multiple choice questions, a mixture of new questions and questions that you've seen before on previous quizzes and things like that. There'll be some true-false questions, some fill-in-the-blank questions, and that you will have to write a short essay on questions. I will start providing review materials next week on Tuesday. Monday, I won't have things available for you Monday because Monday is Labor Day. So Tuesday we'll have some stuff available for you. There'll be less new stuff, but there will be some review stuff. Generally, it's 3-4 chapters of material before we have an exam, and so the exams are generally like that. Usually, they will come at the end of the week. So we have our first one will probably be September 11th. Will open, and then the second one will open about a month from that in October, and then about another month from that in November. So like figure 1 a month coming up. Okay. If you have a questions or I'm forgetting something, just blurt it out. And if you're like I'm looking at the textbook here, and chapter 3 is long. I mean, it goes to what, page 135, 140, and there's no way you can if you're not caught up, there's no way you can catch up in one night. And so it's really important with about a week to go that you recognize, okay, now I should be studying for the exam. That I should be working on the exam. I should be starting to to review a little bit of chapters 1 and 2 and 3 all next week. And remember, I talked about how memory works, that you know, you want to put this in long-term memory, and so that means repetition, and it's really important to sleep. And so it would be best to study over a period of 4 or 5 days instead of just 1 day. And so that's a really key thing. And so you know, where it's about the time where you should think about, I need to start studying for the exam. And so that's one of the things we should do. For the exam, chapter 3 has more material and more important material than the other chapters. Chapter 3, you know, it goes through the organelles, and then it goes through some particular functions. And a lot of this is associated with DNA and the nucleus, the copying of DNA, the separation of DNA during mitosis, the use of DNA to make proteins. A lot of that is all in the nucleus. Then there's a lot on the cell membrane and transport. Those are important topics. They, you know, and so that's a big deal. In chapter 2, there's some important things there as well, particularly the sections on organic molecules and on water. We're not going to do chemical reactions. I'm not going to ask you about, you know, the position of electrons, or you won't have to memorize the number of protons and the number of neutrons. It's more of a general, these molecules are found in these places and they have these types of characteristics. Okay, and so those are important things. Chapter 1 and chapter 4, there will be some stuff from chapter 1 and chapter 4, but chapter 1 has a lot of stuff like naming body regions, naming organ systems, and that's more lab stuff. And so I'll hit that more in the lab. And same with chapter 4, because it goes through individual types of tissues. That's more lab stuff. And so we'll do that more in the lab. But knowing what a tissue is, the basic types of tissues, some general features, that will show up. So, okay. So does anybody have any questions about the exam? You can chat me a question if you want. You know, you can, what else can we say? It's good to ask questions. This is why we have this, is to ask questions. And so I'd like to.
Do we know when it's going to be?
Go ahead.
Do you know when, like, the exam's going to be?
It will open. I'm looking at my schedule. That's why I'm looking over there. Friday is September 11th. And so usually I'll open it Friday morning. And then I will close it sometime on Saturday night. So it's usually 24 hours spanning 2 days. Okay. So plan on it being available probably like 9 or 10 o'clock on Friday, and then closing Saturday night, you know, sometime in there. Okay. Usually I try and do Friday, Saturday, because I know there's lots of other stuff going on, and so I'm hoping one class day and one weekend day that somewhere in there is a good time for you. I you know, it's what it is. That's why I'm warning you. Okay. All right. Okay. Then I wanted to go to our Moodle page if I can find it. No, it's not going to be. Wait, no, this is not it. Hold on here. That's not it. I'm not sure what you can see here. Do you see our Moodle page? Yes? Okay. So usually I get the lecture stuff and the quizzes available by Monday, but sometimes I have problems getting other stuff in there. And so like right now I'm putting in some cell animations. These are supplements. I'm not going to ask you about all the details here, but they're meant to show you things. So I've got one on transcription and translation, because the book is describing a process. And that process, it takes lots of things, and sometimes animations are better ways to do it. Now, when I have these animations on here, they're to help you. I'm hoping they don't confuse you. Sometimes they have more details than what you need to know. And so like this one will have, it definitely has more details, but it kind of shows the process. So instead of having just this description, it's another way to look at it. And so the animations kind of show a continuous thing. They'll describe it. Often, you know, this is the process of making a protein. And it's the 2 steps, and it shows you the animated steps. I'm more interested in with the input and the output of each step, not the details, but sometimes it's very helpful to see how it happens. So if they're confusing, refer back to your book or to the little lectures. They're meant to be helpful. And so sometimes, you know, the problem now is not that there's little, but you can find too much information. And so the details in here are all correct, but there are more of them than there in your textbook. You don't have to know all of them. The textbook is the main reference. And likewise, I should say, when you spend time with the textbook, okay, the textbook is the main reference. The textbook has the level of detail I will expect you to know. Usually my short mini lectures are meant to highlight the important parts, the most important parts. It's always okay to ask, is this important or is it less important? Sometimes I'll tell you right off the bat, you don't need to know that, or that's only useful in certain situations. But in the most cases, go with a textbook, and ask questions if you're unsure. So, so I'm hoping that you look at the textbook, particularly focus on chapter 3, parts of chapter 2. Chapter 1, the ideas on homeostasis and negative feedback are important. And then on chapter 4, it's the types of tissues, the general types and the general features of those tissues, not identifying specific tissues, because there's many, many types. Okay. Let's see here. Again, this is a good time to ask questions if you have them.
The link that you have in Moodle to hand in our labs only lets us attach 1 picture. So is it okay if we email you that worksheet and then just attach the picture there?
I think you can make 2 submissions. I think if you do two files, I think it's okay. Let me.
Oh, you have to add another submission?
Yeah, just do another submission, but let me check that. If not, the way to do it would be to attach 1 file at a time. But I will check that, and if I'm wrong, I will change it. I think I can change it to make it if it doesn't. But I thought I could. I thought my feeling was that you could put 2 submissions in. So if you ever are loading, but there is a limit on submission size, and offhand I don't know that. I think it's 50 megabytes, but I don't know. I'd have to look offhand, and so I can check that. And it might tell you on those things. So if you send me an email with a submission that I've asked you to put somewhere else, I get lots of emails. And so make a note that it's a lab submission and for what assignment, because otherwise I could have trouble finding it, or I might put it in the wrong file because I'm constantly shuffling emails around because I get so many. And it's, you know, it's getting worse because all these online classes. So, all right. What do I got here? Okay. So, we talked about, oh, I was supposed to talk about cancer and stem cells, which I haven't done yet. So there's a nice section on the cell cycle, the cell growth and division, and for the cell cycle, they give you, I don't have a document camera, they give you this thing here, which shows you the checkpoints. Okay, this is from your textbook on page 121. And in the cell cycle, this is control cell reproduction, and not all cells reproduce at the same rate. And so cells are kind of programmed to stop at certain points or to grow at certain points. And when they do reproduce, there have to be assurances that the daughter cells get the right amount of genetic material and that there's no mistakes in the DNA. And so these checkpoints they include things like for DNA to make sure the DNA is intact, that it's double-stranded, that it has the right width, and then to make sure that the DNAs migrate the right way. And so these are called the checkpoints. And these checkpoints have at them certain proteins that can act to halt cell division. And if something goes wrong, where the DNA has had some changes to it, or there's the movement of DNA is incorrect, the checkpoints stop mitosis and prevent the cell from dividing, and may actually lead to the cell to do something called apoptosis, which is kind of it will commit suicide. Okay, when things go wrong with the cell cycle, these checkpoints, if somehow the cell has damaged DNA or irregular movement of the DNA molecules, and it gets past the checkpoint, cells will wind up with damaged DNA, and they may, in some cases, that damaged DNA can cause the cell to reproduce more often than it should, and to not stop at checkpoints anymore. Okay, and so you have these cells that then may go through abnormal cell divisions. This is cancer. This is what leads to cancer. Okay, and so these cells that do this are it's a kind of a homeostatic imbalance, that the normal controls on things are gone, and so these cancer cells can spread, they can divide in an inappropriate way, and this leads to the formations of masses of cells that aren't doing the job that they're supposed to do. These are tumors. And so this process is important to understand, because we need to somehow combat that. And that's why cancer is hard to treat, because it's your own body cells that aren't behaving quite like they should. Also, kind of similar to this is that some cells, the cells that can undergo mitosis most often and that are most likely to continue grow are what are called stem cells, or embryonic stem cells. And these cells have a very general appearance, and they go through mitosis, and they're they're what are referred to as undifferentiated because they have no function. Okay, and by the time you're an adult, most of these cells have actually gone into having some sort of function and no longer go through mitosis at high rates. This is called differentiation, and differentiated cells are kind of committed to doing one thing, maybe to being a skin cell or a liver cell, and they're kind of decided on. Okay. The bad news about having that decision is that often mitosis is turned off. Those cells can't, even if they're injured, they can't reproduce, or they can only reproduce a certain number of times. And so they may not heal after injury, or if there's an infection that kills a lot of them, you may not just have lost some of that function. Okay, this is undifferentiated cells. Could then replace them if there are any left. These are referred to as stem cells. These cells are general but can form any of several different types of other types of cells. And so we have some stem cells in the adult in our bone marrow, and those cells can produce multiple different types of blood cells. We have some stem cells in various other places that if they're needed, they can do a couple different things. But in general, we don't have those. Okay. In general, cells have been committed. Differentiation involves kind of turning on some genes and turning off others that it's hard to go back. And so this is why stem cells are so important, finding these cells and then finding the cues that get them to do the things that you want them to do. So this is the last part of the chapter. I didn't talk about that much in the lecture series, but it's a really important practical application of cancer and stem cells and the types of things that we might do to treat illness. Those are big applications of understanding cells and how cells work. Okay, so I'm going to stop there unless people have any questions. Okay, there will be a forum appearing in a week over the weekend. I'm late on getting it ready, but it'll be ready today. And then there'll be some stuff on tissues and some review stuff that appear Tuesday next week. Okay. And then we will have our exam next Friday. It'll open probably right after we have our little weekly Zoom session. Okay. All right. So if no one has anything to say, thank you for coming. I'm going to sign off, and I will post this online. So I think we're in good shape there. Okay, any final questions? Nope, okay. All right, well, I'll see you next week. Have a good weekend, happy Labor Day, and enjoy your weekend.